All right, good afternoon. We'll go ahead and call to order the regular meeting for the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals for March 25th, 2015. First item on the agenda is a consideration of minutes for our regular meeting on February 25th. Those minutes were included with our agenda materials. Any changes to those minutes? All right, if not, they'll stand approved as presented, and we'll now consider some new business, beginning with a variance request. And it is application Z15010 by Mr. Rob Mulchin of Site Engineering Consultants for Mr. Mark Pirtle. He's requesting a variance from the required minimum 10-foot separation between an access drive and an adjacent property line. And this is for property located in a heavy industrial and gateway design overlay district on the south side of Medical Center Parkway. All right, Mr. Lewis, if you'd review that application for us, please, sir.
Sure, Chairman Rogers. The first application we have today is it's located, excuse me, on the south side of Medical Center Parkway, like you said, just right across the street from Murphy Avenue. It's a vacant piece of property, and the west side of the access drive leads to the backside of Carpenter Village, which fronts on Memorial Boulevard. Like you mentioned, it's zone heavy industrial, and it's also Gateway Design Overlay GD04. What they're proposing is to develop a lot with a beauty salon that includes hair care, manicures, and pedicures. This plan was considered by the Planning Commission for final design review at its March 18, 2015 meeting. The Planning Commission didn't express any reservations about the applicant proceeding with the Board of Zoning Appeals for the variance request at their initial design review meeting on February the 18th. One condition of approval by the Planning Commission was made that any approval for the final design review and the site plan review should be made contingent upon the BZA granting the requested variance. Included in your agenda materials is a letter from the applicant as well as the site plan of the property. Staff has also included photographs of the subject property and surrounding properties for the board's reference. Like I mentioned earlier, it's 0.79 acres bordered by Medical Center Parkway to the north and an access drive to Carpenter Village on the east. The adjacent property to the west is developing with the Dollar General store. And the proposed building will be 2,800 square feet in size. It will have access. It'll have an access driveway onto leading to Carpenter Village as well, and then onto Medical Center Parkway. The variance request is for a waiver from the required 10-foot minimum separation between an access drive and an adjacent property line, as referenced in the zoning ordinance. The request is due to a proposed property line that separates the two users that were previously shared on a single lot of record. The proposed beauty lounge site was originally part of Lot 7 at the time Dollar General was approved by the Planning Commission. At that time, the owner had planned on owning and maintaining both sites, both Dollar General and the future building of those approved site plans. When an interested party came forward to develop the future building, discussions brought about the need for a property line between the two users. The property line was placed down the center of the shared common access drive that separates the two buildings and leads to Medical Center Parkway. Due to the proposed property line being set in the center of the access drive, there's no means to adequately provide the required 10 feet of separation between the access drive and the new property line, thus the variance request. The applicant states in his letter it would be extraordinarily difficult to be in compliance with the requirements of the zoning ordinance due to the location of the property line, delineated down the center of the common shared access drive, to provide the 10 feet of separation on both sides of the proposed property line. The applicant also states each parcel cannot have individual access points on the Medical Center Parkway, so the two parcels must share the existing common access point between them. He also states the condition of the property has not resulted from any deliberate action by the owner, and the site lends itself to a variance request due to the required access points on Medical Center Parkway. Staff recommends if the board chooses to approve the variance that any landscaping that was to be installed in the 10-foot strip should be installed somewhere else on the site. Staff will be able to work with Urban Environmental Department on it during the site plan review. Mr. Rob Mulchin from SEC is in attendance at the meeting, and he'll be able to answer any questions either before or after the public hearing, and then I'll be here also as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? Okay. And I'm sorry, Robert. I spent about half of your presentation trying to figure out where this was, but I figured that part out.
I got on the screen. If you can see, if we'll show the screen, here's the site.
Okay.
Dollar General is on the lower half of this property right here.
Okay, and then show me where this access drive was going.
Let's see if I can. All right, this is a photograph of the Dollar General store, and to the left up here is where the proposed building is going to be. This is the shared access drive going to Medical Center Parkway. Let's see if I can see a site plan that will show it a little bit better. If you can see on the screen here, the property line is going in between the two parcels, and there's parking on each side of the property line.
And then the new building's going there to the right.
Yeah, the building will go right in here.
Okay. And this needs a variance because of that access drive is on the is
Right.
essentially bisected by the property.
Right, bisects the property line.
Okay. I guess why didn't Dollar General need this variance then when they began construction? Was that property line not there?
It was just one lot of record.
Yeah. Okay. So they've subdivided it
Right.
here in the last few months or whatever.
I'm not sure, yeah, when it's been done, but yeah.
Okay. So just to be clear, Dollar General and this new building are going to share this common access drive.
Right.
Gotcha.
And it was subdivided after the parking lot for Dollar General was laid?
Yeah.
You got it?
I think so.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mulchan, anything you'd like to add to the application, sir?
Rob Mulchin with SEC. No, we're in complete agreement with what Robert has said on that. They did put a comment in there regarding the landscaping that would have technically been alongside that, 10-foot access, and 10-foot landscape easement alongside the property line. We've already made those changes in the landscape plans for the beauty lounge and incorporated those landscape elements that should have been there onto the site for the beauty lounge. And we've also done the same thing with Dollar General. We've already gone ahead and proactively gone ahead and put the landscape on both properties that would have technically been along that property line. So, granted that line going on the middle of the concrete drive, we've said it would just be the best thing to do is add that landscape.
Okay. So when this area was originally platted and developed, this was one lot of record. As it developed out, then Dollar General didn't need that entire lot; they just wanted a part of it. So it was subdivided. Is that kind of
Mr. Pirtle had looked at it as taking ownership of both properties, and as time came along, somebody came by and actually wanted to actually buy that lot outright. So that was his reason why he wanted to go back and re-subdivide it. His original intent was to maintain both buildings once both buildings were developed. But the client for the beauty lounge came along and said, we'd like to just purchase the property outright and take care of it ourselves. So.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Mulchin? Thank you, sir. And at this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would, please come forward. And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
If no further questions, I'll make a motion to approve the variance request with the staff recommendations.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, Mr. Moulton, that application has been approved. We'll now consider special use permit requests. First one there is application Z15011 by Mr. Clyde Roundtree from Huddleston Steel Engineering for Hearthstone Group. He's requesting a 5-foot variance from the ordinance requiring a minimum 5-foot wide landscape strip along the base of the building. And this is for property located in the mixed-use zone at the Gateway Design Overlay District on the north side of Medical Center Parkway. All right, Mr. Lewis.
Yes, sir, Chairman Rogers. This subject property is it's a vacant lot which is located on the north side of Medical Center Parkway. If we could pull up the screen, I can show you. There you go. On the north side of Medical Center Parkway, about midway between Gateway Boulevard and Warren Street. It's zoned mixed use, which is MU, and GDO 3. The lot's been proposed to be developed with multiple office and retail buildings. The site plan was considered by the Planning Commission for final design review at its March 18th, 2015 meeting. And the Planning Commission did not express any reservations about the applicant proceeding to the Board of Zoning Appeals for the variance request. Another condition for approval by the Planning Commission was made that any approval of the final design and site plan review should be made contingent upon the BZA granting the requested variance. Included in your agenda materials is a letter from the applicant as well as the site plan and the landscape plan. Staff's also included photographs of the subject property and of the surrounding properties for the board's reference. The site is 12.32 acres and is bordered by Medical Center Parkway on to the south, CSX Railroad to the north, and will have direct access to Medical Center Parkway. The adjacent property to the west and across Medical Center Parkway is being developed with office buildings and medical office buildings. Property to the north and across CSX Railroad are small commercial businesses fronting West College Street. And property to the east is their single-family dwellings and a mobile home park. Phase 1 of this project is proposed to be multiple building complex with a total of 111,000 square feet, with a proposed future addition, a future building of an additional 11,700 square feet. The zoning ordinance requires a minimum 5-foot wide landscape strip along the base of buildings. The applicant is requesting to not install any landscape strip on the south and the west base of the proposed office building number 1, which you can see on your large site plan, and not to install a landscape strip around the entire base of the smaller retail building 1A, which is also shown on your site plan. And this is necessitating the variance request. In his letter to the board, the applicant explains the reasons for requesting the variance. He states that the developer desires to lease the bottom floors for retail and restaurant tenants who desire to have fluid entry points and a potential exterior dining, respectively, along their leased building frontages. Mr. Clyde Roundtree of Huddleston Steel Engineering is representing the applicant, and he'll be in attendance at the meeting to give further explanation and answer any questions the board may have following the public hearing or before the public hearing. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right, Mr. Roundtree, anything you'd like to add to the application? Anything you'd like to add to your application?
Clyde Roundtree, Huddleston Steel Engineering. Primarily, just the nature of the gate of the fountains is going to be a very pedestrian-oriented kind of development, and it's our hope that the restaurants will have the ability to flex their spaces and move out into more of like a plaza, kind of an outdoor dining kind of scenario. And so that would give them the ability just to move outside of their spaces into designated areas, and allow for the kind of the vibe that the development's trying to create, where there's a lot of outside activity, as well as the retail shops that give them the ability to kind of flex where their doors would be to kind of leverage the most kind of a public access to their spaces. So it just gives us flexibility. Ideally, Mr. Gravey would love to see it go more towards restaurants, and really towards just creating that ambiance of a lot of interaction on the outside of the buildings versus just being on the inside or the outside, if that makes sense. More of an outdoor dining kind of plazas, patios in association with the desired buildings.
So are these circles, usually when I see circles, it means that there's trees or some sort of landscaping. Are these areas where it looks as though you want outdoors dining, there's no landscaping at all in these spaces, or there's mixed landscape as well as
Yeah,
concrete?
after meeting with Kane from Urban Environmental, we are moving the requirement more towards the parking lot. So those same beds that would naturally be against the building are going up against the parking. But the primary, not in all locations is that the case, but all that interior plaza area is all landscaped. So it's going to be a very lushly landscaped area. It's just the landscaping rather than being along the foundations of the buildings can be brought into the public spaces, and that'll help define some of those patio areas and create more of a unique environment for the program, for the facility. But those circles are trees for the most part and shrubs.
Thank you. Well, I thought that was correct, but I just thought I would make sure.
Sure.
So instead of where we'd have landscape beds, we'll just have concrete straight up to the building, right?
Correct.
All right. All right, any other questions for Mr. Roundtree?
But the exterior, I'm seeing that there are some landscape beds on the exterior of some portions of the building?
Correct.
Okay.
Once you get down to where the office tower is projected to be, that's where the landscaping jumps from the foundation to more adjacent to the parking areas. So that's kind of and Kane asked me if I would go ahead and, working with him, work on some of the percentages to make sure we're hitting their landscape requirement so that we're not losing landscaping. But it really is a very landscape intensive project as a whole, so I don't think that's going to be any problem meeting his expectations.
All right, thank you,
If you
sir.
look at the elevations that I believe are on your desk, you see that for the most part, they're planning on glass going down eventually to the floor, to the sidewalk level. I'm sure there'll be a step up, there'll be a little step there, but essentially the glass front will go to the floor, and part of this is expected to be retail space, and part of it is expected to be restaurant and other kinds of entertainment space, and that includes both the small building and the first floor of the larger office building. And so the developers doesn't want to have that glass for showcase and that sort of thing and then cover it up with landscaping, which seemed to make some good sense. Most of our gateway buildings have been office buildings where the landscaping up next to the base of a brick side looks very appropriate and looks good. And they want to move this landscaping. I think the total landscaping may very well still exceed our requirements, but not have it at the base of the building on these, basically the pedestrian sides. And if you look on your large sheets at the office building, you'll see on the back side that faces the back parking lot, it's really the top of what shows up on your drawing. They would landscape that in the normal way with a landscape strip next to the base of the building, but not on the more pedestrian sides.
Of course, I wasn't part of the discussion when the ordinance was created about landscaping in the gateway. What was the thought process behind the requirement that there be 5 feet of landscaping around all buildings? Do you know?
That was written before I was here. I know that certainly a factor was not wanting a brick wall to come down to either a concrete sidewalk or a concrete driveway with nothing to break it up. But again, on this, these are not brick walls coming down to the sidewalk. They're going to be glass with the intention that people are looking in the glass windows, window shopping at times. And for that, many of us would want to get closer than being 5 feet away from the window. So I think this would be almost, that pedestrian area to me would be almost more of a downtown feel where you're walking right up next to the buildings, as opposed to a suburban or mall kind of shopping center feel where at some point you're next to the buildings, but also a lot of you're out away from the building and more so.
Similar to, I would equate it like you walk the avenue, the landscaping is right there at a lot of times at the parking lot, but it's not right in front of the building.
Right.
Because you if it was, you couldn't, especially if it was 4 feet tall, you couldn't even see in the shop, if that makes any sense.
Is the avenue not subject to the same ordinance requiring 5-foot landscaping strip as this would be? Because I don't remember.
Yes, it would be, but there would have, because that's not a planned development, so there would have been some variances, or should have been some variances created with that. Because that was certainly part of the gateway.
I don't remember it. All right, any other questions?
There's again, maybe I'm not reading this right. This service that's next to Retail Building 1A, is that where like a truck's gonna pull into the back of the retail? And I don't see any landscaping around it. What does that space look like? I don't know if that's one of these pictures that you're showing here.
It's
but-
not. That space it's right now it's considered a flex area that potentially could be leveraged for more outdoor dining. That's why there's no landscaping against that wall. That wall will look like it'll be articulated like it was a retail building or a restaurant. So it may have actually a semblance of openings and windows, but it's really just a screen to hide the service court area. So that was really the only place we could put the service to kind of embed it where it operates well between all the buildings that are proposed. But as far as that space in general, that has the possibility of having some kind of canopy, or that's the one spot on the plan right now that has a little bit of an organicness to it right now, whether it's some sort of covered structure that's not permanent, or it becomes a flex zone for people to leverage if there's a restaurant across the way and they may be able, or the one that's on the corner could actually use that space. So that's why there's no landscaping against it per se.
Because that's really the only space I'm seeing that would make sense that you would have a 5-foot
Right.
strip there as well. Would a 5-foot strip in front of that wall hinder if there was a restaurant per se that, I mean, would that really be a problem to have a 5-foot landscaping strip there as well, so that there wouldn't be concrete against a false wall?
As far as I don't know if it'd necessarily be a problem. It's just the fact that I know the client was trying to create. The word was used kind of like a kiosk area, that if there were vendors associated, the whole development is really kind of a different mindset in terms of the outdoor space is really highly programmable in terms of there's a central lawn area as well that the client would like to have a skating rink for certain occasions. And I mean, it's really taken on a life in terms of how the green spaces will work. And so that little area represented kind of a nondescript area that we needed some sort of, if he needed some sort of support facilities related to some of the outdoor programming, that's a space that could be leveraged for that. That's why it's kind of nondescript. We knew it'd be adjacent to the restaurants if they needed it for certain occasions, but it was also kind of a flex zone that if something programmatically had to happen, that we needed to set up some kind of a vendor or some sort of a more of a temporary use, it could be in that spot, and then it can be removed whenever the event's over. That just gave us a little bit of a flex zone.
A food truck space?
Well, in essence, I mean, it's just one of those kind of things where if we had it, we know it could be leveraged for whatever the need was for whatever was happening in the plaza areas and the green space areas. It also is potentially some temporary storage if there's an event that required some kind of a temporariness, to stage the event. We thought that would give us, and that originally it's gone back and forth because we've tried to figure out what would be needed in that service area, whether we can use compactors or have to use dumpsters, or so that wall's really kind of gone back and forth. But we pushed it in as far as we could. So if that 1A building was a restaurant, they would have some exposure from the main parking lot. When you walk down that plaza, you'd actually see the corner of the building, so that's why that wall is where it is. It's as tight as we can make it in relationship to how the service area is going to work, but you've hit the area that's still kind of morphing as the project continues to, the dynamic nature of the project is, that's an area that's still flexible.
If you could show the screen that's on the computer, that's the small building, retail was at 1A, and this is the rear side, this is the north side and east side of that building. The doors being the service area, I think that's what he's talking about.
The goal is to make it not look like a service area at all, that you'd have no idea that was even back there.
And just to kind of, just spent a lot of this meeting trying to orient myself where these properties are. If you're coming from Broad Street, you top the bridge and you go past a few houses, a couple streets, and then it's the property that's on the right essentially begins the Medical Center Parkway corporate property, right?
Correct.
Is there like a cell tower there next door? Or
Yes,
okay.
yes, there is.
Okay, all right. And then this is phase one. This property is there's 3 phases to this.
Correct.
And the phase 2 is closer to the hospital. It goes a little bit closer to the
Phase
hospital.
2 would almost be a mirror image of Phase 1.
Okay.
If Phase 1 is successful, the goal is to make Phase 2 have the same kind of allocation of retail, restaurant, and office. And then Phase 3 would be behind the phases, and that could be another corporate center. It could be, I mean, it's on the plans as a big box. But the goal would be that maybe a major corporate tenant would want to take Phase 3 and kind of do, as long as we've set the parameters on the master plan, they would go ahead and develop that building per the regulation or the architectural style of Phase 1 and 2.
Has the Planning Commission already approved the plat for phase 1?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah, I think it's been the final design review, and it is also, there's a final design review at the DRC, tomorrow morning at the DRC, because this is part of the city-owned property, of course, that is subject to the city's design guidelines and the city's design review commission, and so it'll be there tomorrow morning for final design.
And when do you expect to start construction?
I know
I'm not
it's
sure we have a date. I know that the developer is anxious to get started. For one thing, he's got a time frame because of on a 1031 exchange. So the city right now is doing some excavation where some tests that indicated there may be some unsuitable fill, and we're going to work together on that where rather than the city excavate it and then refill it with shot rock, the city will excavate, and then the developer will come to the extent he needs to fill anything back in. He'll use that hole, if you will, for him to move some soil around, because it's not a perfectly level site. There's got to be some mass grading, and so we think we can work together on that. The city's already started on that part. The developer could start as soon as a week or two, and it might take a month, but I'm sure he's hoping for a lot closer to a week or two.
All right. All right, unless there's any other questions, we'll go ahead and conduct a public hearing, and thank you, sir.
Sure, welcome. Thank you.
At this time, anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application, if you would, please come forward. And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
If there's no discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the application, subject to any staff comments.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that application has been approved. Now we'll next consider some frequent flyers here. First one is application Z15012 by Mr. Jake Lloyd for Mid-America Distributors. He's requesting a special use permit in order to operate a fireworks stand at 2510 South Church Street, which is in a commercial highway zone. And a 42-foot variance from the minimum required 42-foot front setback for a temporary structure. And this is pertaining to 42-foot front setback adjacent to Warrior Drive right-of-way. All right, Mr. Lewis, if you'd review that one for us, please.
Sure, Chairman Rogers. This property is located at the southwest corner of South Church Street and Warrior Drive. The southern half of the lot is developed as Bubba's Wine and Liquor and Discount Tobacco outlet. The northern half of the lot is gravelled and undeveloped. The applicant has submitted a letter describing his request and addressing the standards for temporary vendors, as well as a site plan for the property and a copy of the lease agreement allowing the use of the property as proposed. Later on in the agenda, the BZA will consider another temporary vendor for the same property. The two vendors' days of operation will not conflict, though, however. The site has been approved for fireworks tents from 1996 through 2002, and then from 2005 through 2014. According to the city codes, fireworks are permitted to be sold as and used in the city limits from June 28th through July 5th. The applicant is making application only for the July 4th selling season. The tent's hours of operation will be from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. with the exception of July 3rd and 4th, which the tent will be open from 7 a.m. till midnight. The site passed its initial codes and zoning inspections after the application was made. The size of the proposed tent's 30 feet by 60 feet, and the power is going to be provided to the tent by way of a portable generator. The tent operator will properly dispose of the solid waste as needed. The applicant has indicated that the tent operator and his vehicle will remain on site during the overnight hours for security purposes. The applicant will also bring in a portable toilet for the duration of a special use. Although the tent and the parking area are proposed to be located on a gravel surface, this is an existing gravel lot and has been grandfathered in for temporary vending purposes. Both the tent and the parking area for the tent will be located in the gravel area north of the lot. The parking lot does not appear to be an issue. The staff has not received any complaints in the past about the amount of parking that's available. The operation of the tent will not use any of the parking of the existing business on the southern half of the lot, which is paved. The subject lot has two defined access points on South Church Street. The tent far exceeds the minimum separation requirements for alcohol sales and for on-premises consumption, and is approximately 350 feet from the nearest fuel source, meeting minimum requirements. The tent is approximately 285 feet from an existing fire hydrant, also meeting minimum requirements. The location on site where the applicant is looking to place a tent will comply with the 42 feet setback requirement from along South Church Street. In 2012, the staff at that time noticed there were parcel lines on the city's GIS system for this lot, particularly along the west side and the north side adjacent to Warrior Drive, that appeared to have been modified in the system over the last year or so, last 2 years. After noticing this, the staff endeavored to pursue the correct property line locations, and it appears that the current parcel lines on the GIS match the documentation that staff was able to locate. Based on the parcel lines that the city's GIS system currently shows, the location of the tent has historically been erected. It does not meet the 42-foot front setback from Warrior Drive. The front property line along Warrior Drive actually takes a sharp turn to the southeast along the northern portion of the gravel area, and because of this, Mr. Lloyd's application also includes a 42-foot variance request for the 42-foot minimum setback along the northern front property line. Mr. Lloyd may not need the full 42-foot variance, though, as the tent may actually be approximately 5 feet from the property line along Warrior Drive. The board should note that Mr. Lloyd's not asking to move the tent any closer to Warrior Drive than in years past. If the variance is requested, it will allow him to essentially erect the tent in the same location that has been done in the past. The sharp angle of the property line along Warrior Drive, as it is currently shown on the GIS maps, coupled with the required front setbacks, leave the northern end of the lot with little utility unless a setback variance is granted. The BZA should also note that the tent will actually be farther away from Warrior Drive than the closest apartment building directly to the west. The BZA granted both variance requests in 2012 through 2014. Now, there's an existing water line on the subject property just south of the front property line along Warrior Drive. And while water lines are typically buried underground deeper than the tent stakes, staff wants to exercise extreme caution with regard to this water line. As was required in the years 2012 through 14, staff recommended that the applicant have the water line marked and the stakes not be located within the 10-foot of the marked water line. In this area, the applicant must instead use an above-ground appurtenance such as cinder blocks to anchor the tent. Staff also recommends this year that the applicant have a surveyor to mark the location of the tent and to verify to staff that he and his tent contractor comply with this condition in order to avoid possible damage to the water line. Separate motions should be made for each request, and I can read through these staff recommendations. The staff recommends the following conditions: that the certification should be submitted that the tent is flame resistant or treated to be flame resistant. City extinguisher should be kept on site at all times. The city's fireworks ordinance should be posted on site. No fireworks are to be set off on site. Site must pass an electrical safety inspection prior to the opening of the business. An electrical permit must be purchased from the Building and Codes Department in order to obtain this inspection. The tent must meet all minimum building setback requirements for the CH zoning, with the exception of the setbacks to which a variance is granted, and a tent permit must be obtained for the tent. All grass and weeds growing up through the existing gravel must be removed and or killed, and no grass surfaces are allowed for the placement of the tent and for vehicular traveling or parking. In addition, the applicant may need to add gravel and or smooth out some of the existing gravel, subject to the approval of his planning staff. Prior to the erecting of the tent, the applicant must have the water line that is located on the subject field located, and a surveyor must lay out the location of the tent and submit compliance to staff that the location of the tent is at least 10 feet from the marked water line. No tent stakes will be within 10 feet of the marked water line, and no vehicular access to Warrior Drive is permitted. Mr. Lloyd is in attendance at the meeting here, and we'll be able to answer any questions you may have either before or after the public hearing.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right. Mr. Lloyd, anything you'd like to add to the application?
You're proposing that I get a surveyor to...
You got to come up here and...
Are you proposing that this year I get a surveyor to actually lay out the tent itself?
That's correct, yeah.
Would I need to do that even if, like what I had proposed, what I thought Matthew and I had talked about in the past was, in the past, in previous years, we've always used a staked tent, which means everywhere there's a rope that comes down, including the corners, a stake actually has to be physically driven into the ground. That's always been the problem ever since we found out about these water lines. Well, what I proposed last year after the season was that we used a frame tent. A frame tent does not have to have stakes driven into the ground. It helps, but it is absolutely not a must. Therefore, what I was wanting to do was, again, get a surveyor out there, get the water lines marked, and then what we could do is set a frame tent up, and so we could put stakes well away from, I mean, we could do over 10 feet, well away from any water lines or anything, and then any of the areas that are close to those water lines, we'll just probably, most likely it will be concrete blocks, large concrete blocks that would hold the tent in that section. So we wouldn't even have to see. In the past, they've had to drive a stake into the ground. I mean, so they've been trying to, come off at crazy angles to get away from the water line. Well, if we did this, that wouldn't be a problem anymore. Does that make sense?
Okay, let me summarize what I understand you're saying. You're going to have a surveyor come out there and
Mark the water lines.
mark the water line only, which is different than what you're kind of
Well,
have
in
an
the
issue
past,
with.
I had a surveyor come out and mark the water lines.
Yeah.
But what happened was the tent company we used, apparently they weren't too bright. And I told them in person, I marked it in paint all over the lot, no closer than 10 feet to this line. Well, apparently they're not too sharp, and they put it within 10 feet of the line. Well, if we get a frame tent, that should take care of the problem and render having to survey where the tent goes obsolete, because they can just you can use anchors. I know Aaron's here and he does tents. If I don't know, maybe he can explain to y'all better than I can how a frame tent works. But I mean, basically, the entire structure of a roped or staked tent, it has center poles, and then it has poles around the side, and that's it. It's just canvas other than that. Well, a frame tent actually has bars that run through the entire thing, all along the top of the tent, through it, over across the center. The frame is actually what holds the tent up, not the stakes.
Okay, but the problem you have is it's okay to have the surveyor come out there and mark the water line, but you don't want to have to pay a surveyor to come out there and mark where the tent should go?
I don't necessarily mind. I'll be honest with you, I don't even know who to get or how I would go about doing that.
Well, I'm not sure. Why couldn't you have the surveyor that's doing the water line mark where the tent needs to go?
Because it's Tennessee One Call that I called to get the survey of the water lines.
Okay.
And so it's a simple ordeal. I call them up. I say, hey, I'm going to put a tent up in this area. Can you come mark any lines? And so they come in and they mark all the lines running through the lot.
Okay.
Well, we don't actually have to get a surveyor, and I don't even know how I would go about getting a surveyor for short of me going out. I mean, essentially, the surveyor is going to go, okay, well, where are you going to put the tent? And I'm going to go, well, I'm going to put it, one corner here and one here. So I might as well mark it.
Yeah. Okay.
I may be able to help a little bit. I didn't know I was going to get expertly called to testify here, but I'm a certified tent installer. That's what I do. That's my other job. I own a tent rental business. And basically what he's saying is that if you use a frame tent, he can, that whole end of the tent doesn't have to have stakes driven in the ground, period. So theoretically, you can put a whole frame tent in that parking lot, and we weighed ours down with 55-gallon water drums, which is way more than necessary. But like on a 30 by 60 tent, we would use like 8 to 10 of those, and they weigh 300 pounds apiece. And that's what holds your tent in place, plus the actual framework of the tent. So One Call is who we call when we're going to install a tent. We get them to come out and they mark any necessary utilities, gas lines, water lines, whatever might be necessary. So that's what he's having to call, not necessarily a surveyor to have the water lines marked. You're getting the service. They come out and mark them. They'll guarantee them in writing within 3 feet of where they mark it. It's insured within 3 feet of that spot.
Mr. Lewis, would you have any problem going out there? I think, do you do the tent inspections yourself anyway? Would you have any problem going out there and seeing the marks on the ground and saying, looking, yeah, there's no stakes within 10 feet of this line?
Let me just get clear. Is the frame tent, that will be anchored with concrete blocks or 55
It
gallon?
would be, what I would do is anchor it with concrete blocks anywhere within however, whatever distance you all specify from those lines. And then what I had planned to do, I mean, it doesn't have to be done this way. We could use anchors all the way around the tent. But the only reason I would want to use stakes around the rest of it is because stakes are safer. And I think, again, expert witness here could testify that stakes are, they're definitely safer than, I mean, a really high wind could theoretically blow over a, concrete, like, I mean, these are giant concrete blocks, but concrete blocks or 55-gallon water barrels, but most likely where they would blow those over, they will, in most cases, will not pull a stake out of the ground. That's the only reason I would propose using stakes around the rest of the tent that were more than far enough from the water lines.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, so would you have any problem then on that paragraph? It's actually marked paragraph 1, but I think it's paragraph 8.
Yeah, it is.
Deleting the last sentence of that paragraph?
No.
Okay, we're good there.
Yeah,
If y'all
I
wanted to
understand what you're
specify
talking about.
in your approval that I have to use a frame tent, that's fine too.
Okay. All right.
Wouldn't
Most you've
part-
ever-
I mean, I'm trying to use a little common sense here. I think the whole reason why this was brought up is because of the fact that they have made mistakes in the past and don't want them to make mistakes in
That's
the
correct.
future. So wouldn't it be to your advantage to be out there when they're putting the tent up?
I try to a lot of times, but, and I have before, but the tent companies are under a lot of stress during that time. And when I ask them to call me, sometimes I'll get a phone call and sometimes I won't. So short of going and sitting out there all day long.
Right.
But again, that's why I propose, like, I know that this has been a problem in the past. Like, I'm well aware of it. That is why I proposed a frame tent, because what was happening was the tent company was going, well, one way or another, a stake's got to go in the ground somewhere on this corner. And they weren't doing a very good job, in my opinion, of getting it far enough. Well, now, that just takes that out of play altogether. They can go, oh, well, we don't have to use a stake anywhere around this area at all. No stake has to be driven. And that is why I proposed a frame tent, last year after the season, for this upcoming year.
All right.
Does that answer your question?
I understand what you're saying, but what alleviates the fact that even though you're telling them to do that, for them to drive a stake there?
Well, because a frame tent,
But I thought you said that there are going to be stakes other areas of the site.
well, because the difference is that the tent they had been using, a stake, there is no choice. It has to be driven somewhere on that end.
Right.
I mean, that's the way it holds the tent up. Without it,
Okay.
the whole side would fall.
But a
With-
frame tent doesn't have to have a
A
stake
frame
at every
tent does
corner.
not have to have a stake at all,
So you-
period, around any
The
of it.
likelihood of them making the same mistake is
Is
very,
extremely slim. I'm
Okay.
also using a different tent company that I
Okay.
find more reliable for this site, specifically for this reason. And usually, they do exactly what they're supposed to do. I mean, they're a large tent company, very reputable. So, it's
Okay.
Nashville Tent Awning.
How soon, when will the Tennessee One Call, when will they mark their water lines?
I think they'll do it, it's something like 20 days out or something like that, and guarantee it. And so typically, I just call them about 20 days or whatever their specification is. I look it up every year prior to going out there, and then they'll give you, okay, well, if we mark it on this day, that means we'll guarantee it and it's good through X date. And so, yeah, 72 hours. And so what I'll do is I'll call them, 20 days to to a month in advance and say, okay, I want to schedule this site to be marked on, if I know the tent's going to go up on, say, the 20th, I want it to be marked on the 19th. And so far, every year they've done exactly what they've said they would do.
All right.
Okay, I'm pretty comfortable with that.
I think you got the idea that there can't be a stake within 10 feet of that water line.
I got the,
Yeah,
trust
Mr.
me,
Lewis gonna
that,
come out there and tear your
well,
tent down
if it's
there
any
it is.
consolation, it's more expensive for us to get a framed tent. They definitely charge more because they're more of a headache to put up. They take longer. Not to mention there's not nearly as many companies that have them. So, you know, I'm definitely trying to do my part as well to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
This time, then, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion. We do have three particular parts of this application that we need to have separate motions on. So I guess we'll consider the special use permit request first.
If there's no further discussion, I move to approve the special use permit, subject to the conditions set by the staff.
Second.
All right, motion and a second, and I guess the condition set by the staff is it deletes that last sentence of what's paragraph 1, probably should be paragraph 8, about the
Yes.
surveyor.
Yes, deleting the last line.
Deleting the language that says a surveyor must lay out the location of the tent and submit compliance to staff that the location of the tent is at least 10 feet from the marked water line. Okay. All right, and we have a second? And we have a second?
Second.
Second. All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, next consider the second part of that request from variance from section 25E5 of the ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve this part with the corrections of the staff's comments.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and finally, the request for the 42-foot variance from the minimum required 42-foot front setback.
I'll make a motion we approve, subject to any and all and revised staff comments.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, Mr. Lloyd, that application's been approved. I guess we'll see you back. Well, you got a couple other ones here, don't you? All right, application Z15013 by Mr. Alton Sims. He's requesting a special use permit in order to operate a, it says retail sales. I believe that's like a landscaping place in a commercial highway zone. Same location as the previous application, 2510 South Church Street. All right, Mr. Lewis, if you'd review that for us, please.
Yes, sir, Chairman Rogers. This subject property is the same one we just reviewed. It's for a different applicant, and they're going to have it at a different time. It's the South Church Warrior Drive intersection. It's the southern half of the lot of Bubba's Liquors and Discount Tobacco. The applicant would like to be approved for operation of his produce vending business beginning on April 17th and ending on April 31st, 2015. This is the 6th year. He's making an application to the board. He's been approved numerous times in the past for temporary vending, most frequently for seasonal fireworks retailers. The maximum amount of time per year that temporary vending can occur on a piece of property is 70 days. Also, on the agenda is for a seasonal fireworks retailer for the same site. The fireworks vending season is 8 days long, leaving 62 additional days available for temporary vending on the subject property. The applicant is requesting approval for the full 62 days, and the calendar has been included denoting the exact days that the applicant is requesting to be allowed to operate. The applicant will not be allowed to vend from June 21st through July the 10th. as this is the same time frame that the seasonal fireworks retailers has set up to sell and clean up. The zoning ordinance states that no more than one temporary vendor may occupy a site at the same time. Should the fireworks vendor be approved, Mr. Sims would need to modify his calendar for proposed vending days as to not conflict with the vending for the fireworks vendors' days. The applicant will primarily be operating on Fridays and Saturdays and some Sundays. The hours of operation will be from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. The actual vending business will be conducted out of 2 10-by-10 pop-up tents. His truck and trailer will be parked at the back of Bubba's parking lot. The applicant's vehicle, trailer, and tents will be removed from the site at the end of each business day. The applicant's letter to the BZA states that the tents will only be broken down and removed at the end of each weekday or weekend, but the staff has confirmed with the applicant that his actual intention is that they be broken down and removed at the end of each day. Tenants and customer parking will not take up any of the existing paved parking for the 2 existing businesses, as the vending business is proposed to be located on the northern half of the lot, which is graveled. Although the tents in the parking area are proposed to be located on a gravel surface, this is an existing gravel lot and has been grandfathered in for temporary vending purposes. The subject lot has 2 defined access points on the South Church Street. In order to meet the 42-foot setback off the property lines, the tents must be located towards the rear of the gravel area opposite South Church Street. The location shown on the site plan is compliant with the minimum setback requirements, and the applicant will need to take care to place his tents in a manner that is consistent with the site plan and compliant with the setback requirements. The site passed its initial codes and the zoning inspections after the application was made. No outdoor furniture is proposed, and the applicant anticipates that customers will purchase the product and leave immediately. Included with the application is correspondence from both Discount Tobacco and Bubba's Liquors, allowing the applicant the use of the restrooms for the duration of the approval. The applicant has stated that he will handle solid waste management by using a garbage can that can be brought in, and he will empty out off-site at the end of each business day. As the applicant intends to be open during daylight hours, he has no need for electricity for his business. The location of the tents meet the maximum distance requirements from a fire hydrant. If the board approves the application, staff recommends the following conditions: that the time period of operation will be from April 17th until October 31st on the days indicated on the submitted calendar. All tents must comply with the minimum 42 feet setbacks and the required 20-foot setbacks. The tent must be removed from the property at the end of each business day, and no products will be displayed in the public right-of-way. Mr. Sims' wife just passed away recently. That's the reason he's not here today. His wife's funeral is today. So in his absence, I told him that we would submit this to the board as submitted.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis?
I got 2. One is, in the staff comments say the tents must be removed from the property at the end of each business day, but I also thought I heard you say that the truck and trailer must be removed too, or no? As part of the application?
You know what? Whatever he's done in the past, I'm sure he's going to continue to do it in the future, and we've had no problems out of them. I'm not sure if the trucks are going to be gone at the end of each day or not. I don't really know.
It says the applicant's vehicle, trailer, and tents will be removed from the site at the end of each business day.
Okay. Then that's his truck and trailer will be, okay. So he must break everything down and just move everything off at the end of each business day.
Okay. And then he's not making an application on behalf of Mid-America Distributors, is that correct? because the heading on the application reads, Mr. Alton Sims for Mid-America Distributors, Inc.
I would say that he's probably just doing it for himself.
Yeah, okay.
All right. At this time, then, we'll go ahead and conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussion or motion.
No further questions. I'll make a motion to approve the application with the conditions set by the staff.
Do you move to amend them as Mr. Halliburton suggested, including the tents, truck, and trailer?
It's already in the minutes that it will be moved.
I'll second.
Motion, all right. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. That application has been approved. We'll now consider some more fireworks stand applications. Next one there is application Z15014 by Mr. Aaron Blankenship for Old South Patriotic. He's requesting a special use permit in order to operate a fireworks retailer in a commercial highway zone, and this is for property located at 3060 South Church Street. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, sir. This subject property is located on the west side of South Church Street, south of Veterans Parkway. It's currently developed with a multi-tenant commercial development anchored by an IGA grocery store. The applicant wishes to locate seasonal fireworks tent on the subject property. The applicant also has submitted a letter describing his request and addressing the standards for temporary vendors, as well as a site plan of the property and a permission letter signed by the property owner. Staff has also included photographs of the subject property for the board's reference. This site has never been approved for a seasonal fireworks retailer. According to the city code, fireworks are permitted to be sold and used in the city limits from June 24th through July 7th. The applicant is only seeking approval for the July 4th selling season. The tent's hours of operations will be from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. with the exception of July 3rd and 4th, which they will be open from 8 a.m. till midnight. The site passed its initial codes and zoning inspections after the application was made. The size of the proposed tent is going to be a 30 by 60 tent, and it will comply with all the minimum setbacks in the CH zoning district. The applicant states that in the letter that the tent will be 30, actually it'll be 30 by 70. However, he has reduced the size of the tent to 30 by 60. So I guess it'll be 30 by 60 in size. The applicant proposes to use a generator to provide power to the tent. The tent operator will properly dispose of solid waste as needed. The applicant has indicated that his tent operator have a vehicle on site during the overnight hours for security purposes. The applicant also stated that a portable toilet will be brought in on site for the duration of the selling season. The tent is going to be located on the southeast corner of the parking lot. There appears to be adequate space for parking for the existing uses and the proposed fireworks tent at this location. And the operation of the tent will not displace more than 25% of the existing parking on the site. The tent far exceeds the minimum separation requirements for alcohol sales for on-site consumption, as well as from the nearest fuel source. There is a restaurant and there's a shopping center on site, but it doesn't serve alcohol or beer. The tent is approximately 485 feet from an existing fire hydrant, meeting minimum requirements. The site has vehicular access to both South Church Street and Veterans Parkway. In order to minimize internal traffic conflicts, staff recommends the following traffic management measures, all of which are depicted on the site plan. Type 3 barricades should be placed on the west side of the tent. One should also be placed on the north side of the tent, adjacent to the main driveway aisle for the shopping center. In addition, several parking spaces on the north side of the tent should be cordoned off since they will not be functional with the presence of the tent. If the board wishes to approve this request, staff recommends the following conditions. 1, certification should be submitted that the tent is flame resistant or treated to be flame resistant. Number 2 is a fire extinguisher should be kept on site at all times. Number 3 is the city's fireworks ordinance should be posted on site. Number 4 is no fireworks are to be set off on site. Number 5 is the site must pass an electrical safety inspection prior to opening for business. An electrical permit must be purchased from the Building and Codes Department in order to obtain this inspection. The tent must meet all minimum building setback requirements for the CH zone, and a tent permit must be obtained for the tent. One Type 3 barricade must be installed to the west of the tent, and one must also be installed on the north, to the north of the proposed tent, adjacent to the main entrance drive from the shopping center. The barricades must be in place for the duration of the selling season. And number 8, the area around the tent must be cordoned off as shown on the site plan. Mr. Blankenship is in attendance at the meeting and will be able to answer any questions the board may have either before or after the public hearing.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right, Mr. Blankenship, anything you'd like to add to the application?
This is actually our second year. We were approved there last year. I think that may have kind of slipped through in the paperwork. And also, Matthew found a closer fire hydrant. That one meets it at 485, but Matthew, when he was doing the inspection last year, there was one that nobody knew about that ran along the side of the shopping center on the Shelbyville side, up close to that restaurant that Matthew didn't even know was there until he came out and was actually walking the property and found it. So there's actually a fire hydrant that's even closer than the one that was listed, but that one meets the criteria. But I just want to make sure that y'all knew that as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Are these barricades in the cordon off areas, are those same as what you did last year?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, they're the Type 3. They're white with the crossbars, with the reflective crossbars, so that people won't drive. And then if the picture's up there, the problem is when we cordoned those off, there was going to be some parking where people would have a tendency to maybe have backed into the stakes in that little corner. So we cordoned off to the light pole over that way. No one will pull in that area, so we could prevent if someone was backing up or pulling out, if they put the car in the wrong direction. We didn't want somebody to bump into a tent stake.
Okay. All right, very good. Any other questions for Mr. Blankenship? All right, then at this time we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
There's no further discussion. I move to approve the application subject to staff comments.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that application has been approved. We'll now consider application Z15015, again by Mr. Aaron Blankenship, for Old South Patriotic, requesting a special use permit in order to operate a fireworks retailer in a commercial highway zone for property located along the east side of South Church Street, Service Road, period. All right, to Mr. Lewis.
Okay, Chairman Rogers. This subject property is located on the east side of South Church Street near the exit ramp of I-24. As seen on the monitor up there, it's currently undeveloped. The applicant wishes to locate a seasonal fireworks tent on the subject site. The applicant has submitted a letter describing his request and addressing the standards for temporary vendors, as well as a site plan of the property and permission letter signed by the property owner. Staff has also included photographs of the subject property for the board's reference. According to the city's code, the fireworks are permitted to be sold in the city limits from June 24th through July 7th. The applicant is only seeking approval for the July 4th selling season. The hours of operation will be from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. with except July 3rd and the 4th, which they will be open from 8 a.m. until midnight. The size of the tent is 40 by 80, and it complies with the minimum setback requirements in the light industrial zoning district. The applicant proposes to use a generator to provide power to the tent. The tent operator will properly dispose of solid waste as needed. The applicant has indicated that his tent operator will have a vehicle on site during the overnight hours for security purposes. The applicant also has stated that a portable toilet will be brought in on site for the duration of the selling season. The tent is proposed to be located at the front of the lot, and it appears that there's adequate space for the parking for the existing uses, and the proposed fireworks tent at the location and the operation of the tent will not displace any more than 25% of the existing parking on site. The tent far exceeds minimum separation requirements from alcohol sales and for on-site consumption, as well as from the nearest fuel source. There's a restaurant in the shopping center on site. I'm not sure about that, but it doesn't serve alcohol or beer. The tent is well within the 500 feet from an existing fire hydrant, also meeting minimum requirements, and outside the 200 feet from a fuel source. These have also been verified. The site has vehicular access to South Church Street, which can be seen on the attached map as near the cul-de-sac of South Church Street. If the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions. Certification that should be submitted that the tent is flame resistant or treated to be flame resistant. The fire extinguisher should be kept on site at all times. The city's firework ordinance should be posted on site. No fireworks will be set off on site. The site must pass an electrical safety inspection prior to opening for business. An electrical permit must be purchased from the Building and Codes Department in order to obtain this inspection. The tent must meet all minimum building setback requirements for the light industrial zone, and the tent must be obtained, tent permit must be obtained for the tent. In addition, prior to this meeting, the Building and Codes conducted an inspection and found that there were some conditions that need to be met prior to obtaining any permits if the board wishes to approve this at the meeting. And one of them is to maintain weeds and grass below 12 inches in the front of the property. And there is an accumulation of trash and rubbish from the rear of the parking lot, and that must be taken care of prior to any permits being obtained. The applicant is here in attendance at the meeting, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have either before or after the public hearing.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right, Mr. Blankenship, anything you'd like to add to this one?
I was by the lot about 3 weeks ago, and when I went by there today, I was shocked because obviously 3 weeks ago it was 0 degrees and there was no grass. And then apparently between that time, somebody went in and decided they were going to unload all their cardboard on the back of the lot and did the old dump and run. But I talked to Mr. Lewis about that yesterday, and I'm going to come out next week and bring some of my guys from work. We're going to clean it all up, and then I'm going to talk to Miss Lilly and get the codes inspection redone, so that way we can go ahead and start doing what we need to do. But he made me aware of that yesterday, so I just want to make sure that, let you guys know we're going to take care of those 2 issues.
Good deal. All right, thank you, sir. This time we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussion or motion.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the application, subject to the staff comments.
I'll second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, Mr. Blankenship, that application has been approved as well. Next, we'll consider application Z15016, again by Mr. Jake Lloyd from Mid-America Distributors, requesting a special use permit in order to operate a fireworks retailer in a commercial highway zone. And this is for property located at the southeast corner of Southeast Broad Street in Kensington Square Court. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, Chairman Rogers. This lot is currently vacant and consists of a gravel surface. The applicant has submitted a letter describing his request and addressing the standards for the temporary vendors, as well as a site plan for the property and a copy of the lease agreement allowing the use of the property as proposed. The site has been approved for a fireworks tent from 2001 through 2014. The city's codes fireworks are permitted to be sold during the city limits, in the city limits from June 28th through July 5th. The applicant wants to sell fireworks only during the July 4th selling season The tent's hours will be from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. with the exception of July 3rd and 4th, which the tent will be open from 7 a.m. till midnight. The site passed its initial zoning and codes inspections. The tent is going to be 30 by 60 in size and will comply with the minimum setback requirements for the CH district. He indicated that he is not yet determined whether he's going to use a generator or a temporary power pole for his electricity. He will operate, the tent operator will properly dispose of solid waste as needed. The applicant has indicated that the tent operator and his vehicle will remain on site during the overnight hours for security purposes. The applicant will also bring in a portable restroom for the duration of special use. Although the tent and the parking area are proposed to be located on a gravel surface, there is an existing gravel lot, or this is an existing gravel lot, and has been grandfathered in for temporary vending purposes. Staff has inspected the property, and there's adequate space for the proposed fireworks tent and parking at this location. All surfaces for vehicular travel and tent placement must be completely graveled and contain no grass or weeds. The tent far exceeds the minimum standards, minimum separation requirements from the nearest fuel source and from on-premises alcohol consumption. The proposed tent is approximately 110 feet from an existing fire hydrant and also meeting the minimum requirements. If the staff approves the application, staff recommends the following conditions. That one being the certification should be submitted that the tent is flame resistant or treated to be flame resistant. It must have a fire extinguisher to be kept on site at all times. The city's fireworks ordinance shall be posted on site. No fireworks are to be set off on site. The site must pass an electrical safety inspection prior to the opening of business. An electrical permit must be purchased from the Building and Codes Department in order to obtain this inspection. The tent must meet all minimum building setback requirements for the CH zoning district, and a tent permit must be obtained for the tent. All grass and weeds growing up through the existing gravel must be removed and or killed, as no grass surfaces are allowed for the placement of the tent and for vehicular travel parking. In addition, the applicant may need to add gravel or smooth out some existing gravel, subject to planning staff approval. No vehicular access will be allowed to Southeast Broad Street from this site. Mr. Lloyd is in attendance at the meeting, and he'll be able to answer any questions you may have either before or after the public hearing.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right, Mr. Lloyd, anything you'd like to add to this application?
Pretty straightforward.
Straightforward, okay. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussion or motion.
I'll make a motion we approve, subject to staff comments.
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next one is application Z15017, again by Mr. Jake Lloyd from Mid-America Distributors, requesting a special use permit in order to operate a seasonal fireworks retailer in a commercial fringe zone, and this is for property located at 2061 Las Casas Pike. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. This property is located on the west side of Las Casas Pike, just north of East Northfield Boulevard. It's developed with the site is developed with a shopping center, which was previously anchored by the Food Lion grocery store. It is zoned commercial fringe, and a temporary outdoor vending, including seasonal fireworks retailer, is permitted in this zone with a special use permit. The applicant has submitted a letter addressing the standards for temporary vendors, as well as a site plan for the property and a copy of the lease allowing the use of the property as proposed. This is the sixth time that an application has been made for the temporary vending on this site. And it was approved for seasonal fireworks sales from 2008 through 2010, then 2013 and 14. According to the city codes, fireworks are permitted to be sold in the city limits from June 28th through July 5th. The hours of operation will be from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m., with the exception of July 3rd and 4th, during which the tent will be open from 7 a.m. till midnight. They will have a 30 by 60 tent, and it will comply with the minimum setback requirements in the CF zoning district. The applicant proposes to use a generator to provide electricity to the tent. He will also dispose of solid waste as needed. The applicant has indicated that the tent operator and his vehicle will remain on site during the overnight hours for security purposes. The applicant will bring in a portable toilet for the duration of special use. The fireworks operation will not exceed 25% of the total number of parking spaces on site, and the tent will be located on a little-used area of the parking lot. The tent exceeds the minimum separation requirements from the nearest fuel source, and there is a fire hydrant nearby along Las Casas Pike within the maximum distance. Next door to the subject property is Don Ramon's Restaurant, which serves alcohol. The tent is approximately 254 feet from the nearest point of this restaurant, meeting the 250-foot separation requirement. Staff would also like to caution the applicant that the tent should be placed exactly as shown on the site plan in order to avoid violating the minimum separation requirement. If the board approves this application, staff recommends the following conditions. One, the certification should be submitted that the tent is flame resistant or treated to be flame resistant. Fire extinguishers should be kept on site at all times. The city's fireworks ordinance should be posted on site. No fireworks are to be set off on site. The site must pass an electrical safety inspection prior to opening for business. An electrical permit must be purchased from the Building and Codes Department in order to obtain this inspection, and the tent must meet all minimum building setback requirements for the CF zoning district, and a tent permit must be obtained for the tent. Mr. Lloyd is in attendance at the meeting, and he'll be happy to answer any questions you may have either before or after the public hearing.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right, Mr. Lloyd, anything you'd like to add to this application?
Appreciate you all.
All right. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing, and anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application. And seeing none, declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussion or motion.
Mr. Chairman, if no further questions, I move that we approve the application with the 6 recommendations set by the staff.
A second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, Mr. Lloyd, that application has been approved. We will see you next month. All right, next application is Z15018 by Ms. Chrissy Clevenger. She is requesting a special use permit in order to operate a temporary outdoor vending establishment, which I believe is shaved ice in a commercial highway zone. And this is for property located near Target and Toys R Us, 1911 through 2047 Old Fort Parkway. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, Chairman Rogers. This property is located, as you said, at the parking lot of the Town Center Shopping Center. And the applicant proposes temporary outdoor food sales, like I said, shaved ice sales, to be located in the back row of the parking spaces directly opposite from Mattress Firm store. She has submitted a letter from the property owner's representative granting her permission to make application to the board, as well as the site plan and other supporting documentation. The applicant would like to be approved for the operation beginning on April 25th, 2015, and ending on August 31st, 2015. Even though the temporary vending regulations only allow sites to be approved for 70 days, this is one of the locations that was grandfathered in for 6 months approval. She is seeking approval for only 4 months in 2015. The applicant has been approved at this location from 2006 until 2014, and the staff is not aware of any complaints regarding the site's operation during the previous year's approvals. The proposed hours will be Monday through Thursday from 12 p.m. until 6 p.m., Friday and Saturday from 12 p.m. until 9 p.m., and Sunday from 1 p.m. until 6 p.m. The business will be conducted out of a 6-foot by 12-foot trailer, which will be removed from the premises at the end of each business day. The trailer itself will take up 3 parking spaces, which does not exceed the maximum amount of parking allowed on site for a temporary vendor. The location the applicant is looking to place the trailer will comply with all setback requirements for the CH zoning district. The site has passed its initial zoning and building codes inspections. Included with the application is a signed letter from the Toys R Us manager allowing the use of the store's restrooms for the duration of the approval. Toys R Us restrooms will be available during the applicant's hours of operation. She has also stated that she will handle solid waste management by using a garbage can that will be emptied out off-site at the end of each business day. She intends to use a generator for power as she has done for the past 8 years. There are several fire hydrants within 500 feet of the proposed trailer meeting minimum requirements. Temporary vending regulations prohibit tables and chairs on site, and the applicant is aware of this. Ms. Clevenger has indicated that there will be a drive-through, and as there has been in the past. The drive-through will be designed in the same manner in which has been previously approved by the city's traffic engineer, Mr. Ram Balachandra. If the board approves this application, staff recommends the following conditions: that the proposed trailer must pass an electrical safety inspection prior to beginning operation, and an electrical permit must be purchased from the Building and Codes Department in order to obtain this inspection, and the time period of operation will be from April 25th through August 31st, 2015. Ms. Clevenger is in attendance at the meeting, and she'll be able to answer any questions you may have either before or after the public hearing.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right, Ms. Clevenger, anything you'd like to add to your application? All right, then at this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application? Seeing none, declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussion or motion.
All right, yes.
Make a motion, we approve the application subject to all staff comments.
Well, second.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, application's been granted. Next, final application is application Z15019 by Mr. Lyle Lynch for Johnson & Bailey Architects. On behalf of Murfreesboro City Schools, he's requesting a special use permit in order to expand a public school. The applicant is seeking approval to construct a 33,864 square foot building addition, as well as other site improvements for property located at 307 South Baird Lane, which is in a residential single-family RS-15 zone. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, Chairman Rogers. This subject property is located on the north side of Mercury Boulevard. It is also bordered on the west by South Baird Lane and the north by Jupiter Place, on the east by Minerva Drive. It is the site of the existing Hobgood Elementary School, which is located primarily on the north side of the property. On the south side of the property, fronting on Mercury Boulevard, is Murfreesboro Fire Station number 3. The site is surrounded on all 4 sides by single-family residential uses and zoning. The applicant is requesting permission to expand the school facilities with a 33,864 square foot building expansion. Public schools are considered an institutional group assembly uses. In order to expand school facilities in an RS-15 zoning district, a special use permit is required. Included in your staff comments is a letter from Mr. Lyle Lynch, project architect who is representing Murfreesboro City School System, addressing the standards for special use permits as well as specifics for the proposed expansion. Also included is the site plan of the proposed expansion that includes additional parking and 25 additional queuing spaces, as well as the color rendering of the building addition that includes the gymnasium and 10 additional classrooms. Staff has also included photographs of the site and of surrounding land uses for the board's reference. The board may recall approving a 5,347 square foot classroom addition in February of 2012. The school system hopes to have current addition completed by the beginning of the 2016 school year. The total area of the subject property is approximately 20 acres. Hobgood was originally constructed in 1954, and the current building size is approximately 78,975 square feet. The applicant proposes to build a 33,864 square foot addition, which will bring the total building size to 102,839 square feet. The proposed additions are located on the east side of the existing building and will be constructed over existing playgrounds. According to the applicant, the design of the addition will be constructed to complement the existing building. Plans also point out that there will be renovations on the inside of the building, bringing the total number of classrooms to 39. As part of this plan, there will be an extra queuing lane added to the existing 2 queuing lanes south of the existing building, just north of the fire hall on Mercury Boulevard. It's anticipated that the addition of the proposed queuing lane will help improve traffic flow on Baird Lane. The applicant has been working with the city's traffic engineer, Mr. Balachandra, on the design of the parking lot and traffic circulation. Included in the changes and shown on the site plan, there will be new access drive. There will be a new access drive onto Jupiter Place. In addition, the existing parking lot on Jupiter Drive will have one access point reconstructed to help traffic flow on that street. According to the applicant, the site will meet the minimum parking requirements. The site currently has 84 parking spaces. There will be a net increase of 50 parking spaces, so the site will have a total of 134 after the construction of the new parking lot. The lot size meets the minimum requirements for the proposed use. There will not be new external broadcast. There will be no new external broadcast systems, nor will there be any new accommodations for RV hookups. There will be modifications to the existing site lighting as part of the construction of the new parking lot. The applicant has submitted a photometric lighting plan showing the lighting levels at the front property along Jupiter Place that are less than 0.5 foot candle, which is a requirement of the zoning ordinance. Mr. Lynch is in attendance at the meeting, and he'll be happy to answer any questions, and I will too at completion of the public hearing.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right. Mr. Lynch, anything you'd like to add to the application? We appreciate you. Understand you wanted to be last.
Sure.
Fine.
Chairman Rogers and members of the BZA, we appreciate being heard today. As mentioned, we met in February with staff, and their biggest concern was the traffic along Minerva Drive and some planned future development up at the north end of Minerva Drive near Main Street. And they were concerned with the amount of traffic on Minerva, and that's the reason they requested that we change our access point to Jupiter Place, which we've done. That's about the only comment. Mr. Enoch Gerald with Huddleston Steel Engineering is also here to address any questions, and Mr. Gary Anderson with Murfreesboro City Schools is also here if any questions concerning the schools should arise. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any portables at the school now?
No, there is no portables at that building.
I mean, this is you're adding 50%, increasing its square footage by 50%.
Well, we're adding, it will be a third of the size of the building will be the addition, yes.
Okay. But most of that's just a gym?
The floor plans consist of 10 additional classrooms, a gymnasium with supporting spaces, stage, chair storage, and things like that, and then 2 music classrooms.
Okay. Are you all expecting a noticeable increase in the population there at the school, or is this just to accommodate future growth?
Mr. Anderson has studied that extensively, so if I can get him to address that issue, that would be an appropriate time to bring him up.
All right.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Gary Anderson with City Schools, and the east side of town has exploded on us more than we anticipated. We knew the west side was growing. As we built over on the west side, the east side filled itself back up. The 10 classrooms are designed to hold up to another 200 children maximum in that school. The school right now is about 425 to 450, so it would hold approximately 650 students. We're in need of those classrooms because every school from John Pittard to Reeves Rogers to Hobgood and Black Fox are all at capacity right now. So we need to be getting some additional space on that side of town. So we expect to fill the school up over a few years' time. It will not happen the first year. It'll be probably in our growth plans that we've had on the study of the 2035 plan for the city. We're saying we're going to grow about 100,000 people total. It means we're going to be growing quite a few more students, up to another 4,000 students over the next few years. So we're looking at having to be able to get some spaces lined up, and so we're trying to move quickly to get these things done.
Okay. What's the core capacity of Hobgood currently?
That's a great question. This is the third addition to this school. We added 4 classrooms and a teacher work area about 4 or 5 years ago. We did energy efficiency renovations to the inside of the school then. 2 years ago, we added a bigger core, a bigger library, a bigger office area, a bigger cafeteria and dining area. And so by adding those things, that made our core big enough to handle this. And this was the third phase of the plan. The issue that we had is the gymnasium we had was kind of landlocked, and where it was, and we have to build a new gymnasium. We cannot use the existing gymnasium. It's just too small with where it is. And so, yes, this would handle the core, and that's why we designed it this way.
Gotcha. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Anderson? Thank you, sir. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application?
My name is Elizabeth Farrar, and I live on Beard Lane. And our driveway is at the stops, between the stop sign and the entry of where parents drop off their children. And my only concern is I'm all for this. They need the gymnasium. When they have assemblies, it is packed. So I'm for this. I just want to make sure that with the traffic flow, that the safety is taken in consideration for the children. There is a crossing guard at the point where they drop off the children. There is no crossing guard for the walkers, which is just a little ways down from where they drop off the children. So there's someone directing the traffic and stopping traffic for where people are coming in and letting the cars go. But the children that are walking are on their own crossing the street. And sometimes parents don't want to stop and wait in the line now to let their children out, and they'll stop and let their children out and so they don't have to get in that traffic flow and let them out and cross on their own. I didn't get how they were going to do, if there's going to be like another crossing guard at Minerva or another crossing entrance at Jupiter, or if we're going to still be the only entry point on Baird. So I just want to make sure that the fire department is taken in consideration also for the traffic flow, because there's so much traffic on Mercury where they're coming in at Baird Lane that where the crossing guard is there, if we're the only entry point for the drop-off point, that if there's an emergency and the fire department has to get out, that they can get out. So those are just my concerns, is making sure that we're keeping all of the safety in place with the traffic flow.
All right. Have you discussed any of this with either Mr. Anderson?
No,
or
we
City
just
Schools?
found, no,
Okay.
I haven't called anybody. I thought that's what I was supposed to do here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But these are good, that's good questions, and probably issues that I'm sure the city schools will want to consider and discuss with you. I'm sure they have answers for you and can help you. I don't know a whole lot about it, but they're good questions. Maybe Mr. Anderson or somebody will come up and
Yeah,
answer
and
those.
I mean, I'm fine with the whole thing. I just want to make sure as the planning is going that those things are taken into consideration.
Okay.
So,
Looks like we have somebody coming up here.
Enoch Jarrett with Huddleston Steel Engineering, working with Lyle and Mr. Anderson. I'd be glad to address that now if you'd like, or later.
Sure.
We have looked at these very same things. I forget the name that you discussed. there's, I don't know if you've got, Robert, if you have the overall site picture, but there's 2 traffic control aids today, one at Baird and Mercury, and the other one at Baird and where you come into the entrance of the school today for the car rider pickup. I think the school kids you're talking about are the ones going down East Castle Street, maybe? Yeah. I know my pointers don't work on the screen, but right there, there's a traffic guard today, and today there's 45 queuing spaces along that for the car rider pickup. And we're increasing that 25, so we're going to have 70 queuing spaces. I've been up there several times during bell time, 2:30, and there's not been any traffic backed up on South Baird. I've never seen any cars backed up on South Baird to Mercury. So we're adding more queuing spaces, and we're confident that that we won't have any issues with traffic backed on Baird or not close to Mercury. So we've looked at that. I understand the concerns because some of the children come out of the school and just go straight across East Castle. They don't come down to where the traffic guard is at. And I don't know if that's the school or the kids or the parents, but we've discussed that with the city staff and Gary, so they are aware of that, and they're going to look at that. And there's a sidewalk for the kids to come down and cross there. I just think they take the shortcut, quite frankly, but they are looking at that. We understand that. So we have looked, and we are adding 25 additional queuing spaces on site, so we don't have any traffic backing up into Baird at all.
All right. Thank you, sir. Were you able to hear him? Okay. All right. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak for or against the application?
Hello. Hi, my name is Amanda Moore, and I'm Liz's neighbor. I live on South Baird as well. I'm sorry for my allergy voice today. I'm not here to speak for or against it. I came today just to get more information. And so I was going to ask if you could put the map back on the screen, and if you all could explain where the new additions are going to be and where we're looking at the changes to the site.
It's up to you. If that's easy for you. If that's easy for you.
We just hold it up, we're done.
She may not be able to see it. You might.
I just lay it on the table.
And you can point.
Okay. I got it on the screen.
This is South Baird. Both of y'all live here somewhere.
Can we have this on the screen?
Yes.
And fire station down here. Today, there's a traffic guard here and here. And we're adding these 25 spaces, we're adding another lane for cars back here to keep them out of Baird Lane. Y'all up here is additions on the far side of the school from y'all. The gyms here and the classrooms are there. It's out towards where the soccer fields are today, is where the additions are.
Okay, so there'll be construction and road construction on this part of the school.
We'll be driving additional lane here for storage, but it's all on site, and then we'll have our new construction entry coming off of Jupiter and everything will be.
So the building construction will be like that.
Correct.
One other question, what will happen to the current gym?
We're open to suggestions.
It seems like a hard space to convert to something else.
Well, we're going to try.
The current gym is open for discussion from the administration of the school and the superintendent. They're trying to decide how to utilize it. It's a great space, and they're trying to decide to use it as an indoor play facility or to convert it over to maybe some supplemental areas within the building itself. Since the school is 60 years old, it wasn't designed the way schools are utilized today. So we're thinking we got a lot of opportunities there. We're not sure how yet we're going to utilize that space, but we will not tear that down if that's your question. We plan to leave that there.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against the application? And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion that we approve the application.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that application's been approved. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation and good questions. All right, that concludes it. Any staff reports or other business?
Not for me.
There being none, then we're adjourned.